Alright, so in the world of horror gaming, there's a few series that help shape what the genre would become. But before you games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark impressed many back in 1992. Two sequels followed with diminishing returns, so when 2001 rolled around, it was time for something new. Now, the Alone in the Dark series has a pretty spotty history, with large gaps between releases and often less than stellar reviews. It's clear the series is most remembered for the original, but today I want to talk about what would be the first of a few attempts to reinvent the series. Now, I've only played a few games in the series. I mean, I remember renting the 2008 game on the PS2 back in the day, and that was pretty shit, but I actually thought that the recent remake was pretty decent despite some very obvious flaws. I mean, it's obvious that this series doesn't exactly get the most A-grade games, but they don't exactly have the most A-grade budget either. I don't know. Let's take a look at the new Nightmare anyway and see how she holds up. Alright, so this game does have two playable characters, but for this one I'm going to go with Aline.
This is Fisk. I hope you had a safe trip.
So our story begins with Edward Carnby listening back to a voicemail by his partner, Charles Fisk. Charles had gone to some place called Shadow Island to investigate some ancient tablets for some bloke named Frederick Johnson, but he's turned up dead. Now Carnby takes Charles's place to go suss the tablets and find his killer, while our character, Aline, is there to help find the tablets and assist this bloke called Professor Obed Morton. We wake from a nightmare on the plane heading to the island, and Carnby is straight to business, being real sus straight off the bat about this Morton fella.
He's a scientist, a great researcher.
Well, to me, he's just another suspect.
Our yarn doesn't last too long, however, as the plane is attacked. We quickly rush to get some parachutes and make a jump for it, getting separated from Carnby in the process. This is where our game begins. This setup is alright. I mean, it moves really quickly, so it can get a little bit confusing if you're not paying attention. Now, thankfully we've got radio contact with Carnby and let him know that we landed on some mansion roof so he can come find us. Heading inside, we find some crazy lady in a bed who's not too pleased about us coming into the house. Now, this lady is Morton's mum, who warns us about some creatures of darkness or some shit, and apparently old mate Mordo is in danger. We read something in the room going on about him researching Native Americans and being brushed off before getting confronted by this creature in the room that appears to be afraid of light. We find some more creatures but have no weapons to shoot them, so we shine the light and run around them. Now clearly these guys didn't listen to the no locked doors policy from Bible camp because there's locked doors everywhere. Thankfully turning off this light in his room lets us see a revolver in this case that we had a key for from Morton's mum. Doesn't fare too well against this little fucker, so we decide to run off and see Morton in the next room running away. We catch up to him and try and talk, but he shoots us with a tranquilizer. We have the nightmare that we had earlier before waking up in a bedroom and calling Carnby to let him know that this shit's pretty fucked. He rubs it in a bit, but he's still gonna try and help us.
Sounds like your wonderful professor might not be so wonderful after all. Don't move, I'm coming.
Now we head down to this creepy spot under the bedroom where there's a convenient shotgun, and then we spot Morton having a chat with someone, but he's sounding pretty stressed. Some bloke shows up and knocks him out, so I guess that's our cue to leave. Back upstairs we run into Carnby, who wants to stick together, but we're like, yeah nah mate, and get him to help us climb the attic. Up here we meet this dude in a mirror who wants us to find a mirror stolen off him by some bloke named Eden Shaw.
I know what you are seeking, and I can help you find it. We all need to know where we come from. We all need to know where the blood racing through our veins comes from.
Now we talk to Morton's mum again, who says this guy is sus as, so we grab this mirror and take a grenade launcher that was just kinda left laying around and go meet this mirror bloke. Hey cool, a statue. Yoink. As we're leaving, we run into this Native American bloke who ends up being this Eden Shaw guy, and he needs our help. Apparently we need to find 7 statues of 7 guards of light so this guy can carry out a ritual or something.
Only then can I carry out the ritual. Only then can I become the one the white men stopped me from becoming. The last of the warriors of light.
The mansion is slowly opening up at this point, which is good. I mean, I'm still fucking confused finding my way around, but we're getting there. Making our way around the joint, we start to see more monsters. Some are a little bit tougher than others, so this shotgun has been really handy. In this office, we find this sus-looking mirror, and after laying a few rounds into it, we find some shit about witch doctors, and I think it's about time we go back to see Morton's mum. Now, we ask her why everyone seems to hate Obed. Oh, and apparently she has another son, Alan, who she's just disowned. Apparently their family bears a dark secret, and Alan is the cause of it, and after telling us, she just hands us this glass prison without much info or instructions.
Enough! Leave me now! I'm weary and wish to sleep. Besides, all in all, I find you very unpleasant.
Well, fuck you, lady. Anyway, we use this glass thingo on this projector with our torch, which then shows us this video of, I assume, Alan injecting their father with some nasty shit. After which we get this cube with a code on it that opens this secret door in the library. In here we get these tablets, and after flicking this switch, we find a tyrant that was hidden under the library. This is a pretty short battle, made really easy with a grenade launcher, and once we grab this half of the medallion from old mate's glass tube, we head back to mum and have a quick yarn. Now apparently tonight is a special night, and this lady plans on kicking the bucket. At least she gave us the rest of the medallion before going. Oh, and old mate's still kicking too. Now we head back down to the lobby and have a quick chat with Carnby on the radio, but each time he tries to talk shit about Obed, we keep jumping on his dick. Apparently we reckon he's our father, and it's one of the reasons why we're here.
I have good reason to believe that Professor Morton, that Obed Morton is my father.
If that's a joke, it sure isn't funny.
The dates coincide, and I was shown a picture.
After we use this medallion to unlock this secret door behind a mirror, we head downstairs and then take this ladder up to the greenhouse, where we run into Edenshaw once again. Now we reckon this fella could have stopped this before, but he keeps just dodging that accusation. At least he tells us to go to the fort to stop this Alan bloke. We have to rush, as this mean bastard is back on our tail. He's pretty persistent, but it's okay, because I don't think he can chase us between discs. Anyway, we climb up the fort where we find Obed and ask him if he's our father.
Are you sure you never knew Mary Cedric? Are you sure you're not my father?
Me? Your father? Me? A daughter? I don't know who put that foolish idea in your mind.
Come on, I think it was pretty obvious that this guy gives some serious incel energy. He decides to be of no help, so we head downstairs and find this thingo that we need to fix to get through this wall. There's plenty of enemies in our way while we try and put these pieces together while finding the statues. We find ourselves in a workshop with a bunch of weapon parts, and after finding a handful of keycards, we're able to make our way through to the planetarium. We talk to Carnby again, telling him that Obed is nuts and we don't reckon he's our father, but this just makes us sus on Johnson for sending us out here. Now Carnby reckons there's something special with this joint, so we set the machine in the room to today's date in the game and watch as the planets align. This is some pretty crazy shit and must have something to do with tonight's ritual. We move on from here, collecting another statue, but outside we have to call Carnby again. Now he mentions he's got a stone disc that we'll need, so after a cute little meet up outside the fort, we head back and now we've got our hands on 3 statues. Carnby has the same, and we both just assume that Edenshaw has the 7th, so it's time to fuck shit up. Now this weapon that we've got needs a fair bit of power, so we set up this machine to draw some lightning, but this fucker shows up once again to try and spoil the party. We lure him into the electricity a few times to put him down for good, then once we reset the machine, we run down to the caves and blow open the wall. These caves are impressive, and thankfully while we're down here we finally run into Carnby. We read some shit on the walls about how the creatures of darkness will be feeding on everyone if the gates are opened.
That doesn't sound good.
You've got that right, Kano. We better get moving. We pick this convenient stash, then meet up with Edenshaw to confront Alan. Alan then starts doing a bit of a bad guy speech, telling us he killed his own father, then proceeds to straight up deck the old man. This guy means business and reckons it's time for darkness to spill out across the world. We thought Carnby was done for, but Edenshaw says he'll be right and we must continue the mission. These monsters keep coming, but we make it to this big temple and grab a few stones so we can do this little puzzle for another stone to complete this pyramid that you would easily miss because it blends into the fucking background. I'm giving the short version for all this because you can go crazy figuring out what the fuck you're doing. Anyway, you get whatever the fuck this is and this statue starts hyping us up before we make our way back down the caves. At this point we're killing everything in our way because why not? And these spider dudes are pretty cool. We spot Alan and chase him through these areas that look straight out of Alien, but then when we catch up to him, Obed shows up, only now he's a hideous monster.
Look what you did to your brother.
Obed? But...
Suck shit, dickhead! We jump down to grab the statue that he dropped, but we can't go back, so the only way out is forward. We get a radio call from Johnson and we tear him a new one for telling us Obed was our father. He admits to doctoring the photo of Obed to convince us to search for him and that he really works for the government. Things are about to get worse though, as Obed shows up being a creeper. This then turns into the shittest not boss fight ever as we just stun him, run into the next room, and then put down the statue. We then proceed to say goodbye to Edenshaw and then get picked up by Johnson while the island explodes. Where the fuck was the boss fight? Didn't Kambi get one? Well, that was a little bit underwhelming. I mean, I liked a lot of the ideas with the story, and the setting and the atmosphere is cool, but I don't know, this needed more time to cook. But that could describe more than just the story with this game, so let's move on. Now, the new Nightmare does make a noticeable effort to move the series forward, but while there's a lot of improvements to be seen, not everything goes smoothly. So this game is essentially an attempt to reinvent the story and atmosphere of the original game. There's a clear attempt to take the series back to its roots and bring the series to a completely new generation of gaming. Now, I haven't played the original game, and not to put it down, but I definitely wouldn't get much out of it. Its influence is undeniable, but it's a you had to be there sort of situation when looking at how the game has aged overall, and I play a lot of jank. Obviously, we've still got the choice between two characters to play as, only this time around we've kept Edward Carnby and replaced Emily Hartwood with Aline. I'm not really sure why they went with this change, but they did bring back Emily in the remake for all 12 people, including myself, who played that game. The story here feels like it has a lot of potential, but it is a bit messy. I think Carnby's motivation to find his partner's killer makes more sense than Aline's, which needed a bit more depth for it to make sense and have us invested. The story is in such a rush to get going, but settles in a little bit better as it goes along. I don't mind the rest of the story. The ancient Native American aspect is interesting, and this mad scientist bringing these monsters of darkness into the world to cause havoc gives us some stakes. I think it would have been better to focus on just the one protagonist rather than forcing themselves to bring in the two character system, because that's what the first game did. I'd say there's a lot of pressure to live up to that game's reputation while also competing with Resident Evil, which completely dominated the market. They do put some effort in to get the CGI scenes looking decent, but I did run into some really weird sound issues. The scenes may start fine, but there was a lot of noise suddenly popping through that would just kind of ruin it.
My safety? Is there any danger? I was hired to authenticate the translation of the Abcanis stones. I will be working with Professor Morton.
Yeah, not really sure what's going on there, because it's happened both times I played this game, so it must be baked into it. And while these scenes do look good, the acting throughout the whole game is pretty hokey. It doesn't go into so bad it's good territory, but there's a level of silliness that can just make it a little hard to take things seriously. At least there were some efforts made to make the vibe creepy, but I would have auditioned a few more people for the lead roles. Alright, so all that shit's a bit inconsistent, but the graphics are probably this game's strongest aspect. When I say graphics, I mostly mean the backgrounds. The amount of detail on show in each location is really neat and makes exploring the mansion that bit more interesting. The use of lighting is really where this game shines though, and adds an interesting twist to what was a bit more of a dated style at that point. We're still playing with 2D backgrounds here, which wasn't essential to do by 2001, but some developers decided to still roll with that here and there, so when it came to the lighting, they had to get creative. When you turn on a light switch or shine your torch around, you're basically uncovering a second version of the same background. This is a really creative workaround where you normally just use a 3D environment for dynamic lighting, and it plays into how important lighting is to progress through the game. Now, the 3D models are a little less impressive. While I liked the monster designs, which fit a bit more into what you'd expect in 2001, I thought the characters could have done with a bit more work. There was a certain lack of detail I thought could have elevated this game a little bit more, considering even what the Resident Evil remake was doing around the same time. I know it's a little unfair to compare when they clearly don't have a Capcom level budget, but the point is, for a Dreamcast and PS2 game, this could have been pushed further. The lack of mouth movements for the in-engine cutscenes dates this thing a little bit too, and it's weird how the scene basically shrinks and downgrades whenever there's a dialogue scene. All of this stuff just kind of cheapens the game, and it doesn't show the kind of push forward that was shown in other games around the same time. So as expected, gameplay is pretty standard affair, and almost exactly what you'd expect from a survival horror game of this era. I guess the main difference is freely moving the torch around to light specific objects, but really the rest feels the same, with tank controls and auto-aim. Well, mostly feels the same. This game can feel mighty clunky at times. There's an expectation that tank controls will feel at least a little bit clunky. After years of playing these types of games, I'm pretty used to it, but at times this game can feel just a little bit too unresponsive. It's frustrating trying to run through rooms and trying to get through a door that you're clearly in front of, but just not in the right spot, or some items that just aren't letting you pick them up very easily. It's all just a bit clunkier than it needs to be, but at least the torch is a strong part of the experience. Needing it to look around to find certain things is a nice touch and helps the game feel somewhat unique. Despite the inconsistent stories, the split between using different characters is kind of neat too. You'll choose between Carnby and Aline at the start, and while the endings are identical no matter how you finish the game, a lot of the stuff during the game is more different than I thought it would be. Carnby starts off straight away with a gun and will be more action heavy throughout the game, while Aline has to find a gun first. Some locations are different, and the last sections in the caves are different as Carnby. Puzzles will be a little bit different too, but one thing you can bet on is that there's going to be too much text at times. These are just a few differences I can remember. I'm sure there's plenty more, but the worst one is easily the end boss fight. With Kambi, it's more of a real fight if I remember correctly, but as Aline, you literally just stun the baddie back far enough to run past him and that's the game. It's fucked how bad it was. Combat doesn't falter too much at least. A lot of the enemies are pretty tough, and at least early on you'll need to be quite a bit more conservative with your ammo. You kind of get a few energy weapons just dumped on you later in the game, but at first it's pretty standard with a pistol, shotgun, and grenade launcher. Some enemies you won't be killing as they are afraid of light, so you just use the torch to spook them and run away. The energy weapons are neat-ish. I mostly just used the little electric pistol that was super overpowered and ammo was really easy to score. It definitely feels more horror in the mansion, and needing to use 3 shotgun rounds to take down some enemies adds a little bit more tension with conserving ammo. I just wish we got more gore and not just enemies disappearing. There's a decent variety with the enemies. I mean, these spider dudes are pretty cool for one. I just wish the boss fights didn't suck. They aren't even boss fights. Like, I've already shit on the ending, but this dude that follows you around the map isn't exactly bringing much to the table. All that aside, I did mostly enjoy the puzzles and the key finding parts of the game. There's at times way too much text going on, as I mentioned, and this can make finding answers annoying when you need to dig through 30 pages to find something, but for the most part, I find these aspects pretty decent. I mean, there's things to like here. Load times are swift, some parts instantly teleport you to where you need to go, and the save tokens keep you on edge, but clearly a lot more time needed to be put into so many parts of the game. Anyway, I reckon it's time to wrap this one up. I want to like this game more than I do, and I think there's a lot here that could be great, but what we're left with is just something a little bit too undercooked, and perhaps lacking the talent behind it that could help its potential be fully realised. I feel like this series is just destined for mediocrity. It took so long to get with the times, and then when it did, it just fell behind. This isn't a bad game, but it's got nothing on something like Code Veronica, and for horror games, the Dreamcast just deserved better. This was unfortunately quite underwhelming. I think I'm going to have to go with a 6 out of 10 on this one. I mean, it gets propped up a little bit with some cool environments and some great lighting tricks, but just can't stand with the best. Anyway, that's all from me today. I'll catch you next time.